Hello, lovely. I am doing this recording to provide an update on what I'm experiencing now, 6 months after I recorded the Phoenix Burning podcast. So, if you did not hear that podcast, you will still get a lot out of this recording because I'm going to share things that I've learned over my last 6 months restoration period and things that you perhaps may also be able to take away and implement into your own life. And if you did listen to the Phoenix Burning podcast, I'm also going to provide some updates on things that I shared in that series and where I am now. So I decided to do this recording for two reasons primarily. One is, as I just said, to be able to share what I've experienced the last 6 months in the event that it may help you in your journey and in your process. And then the second reason is I got such lovely feedback on the Phoenix Burning podcast. So thank you so much for those of you that, if you're somebody who reached out and shared with me how that impacted you and what you took away. I got a lot of input on takeaways, things that really resonated with people and allowed them to see things in their own journey, in their own experience, tools that they were able to implement. So if you haven't listened to it, you may want to check it out. And I also had a couple people reach out to me concerned, after listening to episodes, because I was very raw and vulnerable and shared exactly what I was feeling, which was not great. So I wanted to give you an update, not leave you with this heavy Phoenix burning phase. I did mention in the last episode, the 8th episode, that I was doing well. So I started recording Phoenix Burning 6 months ago now. So it's been 6 months, and the last episode was, I think, the first week in February, and it is now the end of June. So it's been 4 months since my last episode. So some of the questions that I get from people are, so I did a 5-day deep dive with a healing practitioner to support me in resolving the really significant physical symptoms that I was having. And then also, of course, as a result, it supported me in resolving emotional symptoms that I wasn't aware were connected with the physical, right? And one of the questions I get is, have my symptoms returned? No, they have not. I am in good health, possibly the best health that I've been in for a long time. And so my physical symptoms have not returned. In fact, I'll share a little bit. At the time that I went to the practitioner in February, I actually had not been working out for about 5 years. So when I say working out, I mean like in a significant way. So I, did things like taking care of myself, walking and yoga and dancing. But I had found myself unable to work out because of, I felt the fatigue and other kinds of symptoms that would flare up when I would do a physical exertion. So shortly, like just a couple weeks, my little kitten here is joining us, so the camera's shaking. But shortly after I came back, a few weeks after I came back from my 5-day deep dive with Luke Corletto, I signed up for a martial arts class, and I've never done martial arts before. And I immediately started going 3 days a week and very quickly went up to 4 days a week. And so I've been able to work out in a significant way 4 times a week right away after doing that 5-day deep dive. So my physical health is really good, really well. And I also wanted to share that I just came back just last week. I had a beautiful visit with my youngest son, who's currently living with his dad. And for those of you that listen to the podcast know that him choosing, actually not so much choosing, but him going to live with his dad full-time, we'd had shared custody before that, was the beginning of a series of events that caused me so much grief. And I believe I shared in the Phoenix Burning about my concern around parental alienation and my relationship with my son and what the future was going to hold. And here we are, 4 months out from when I stopped recording, and I feel very positive about my relationship with my son and the trajectory that it's on. Like I said, just got back from a beautiful weekend sharing time with him. So I find those two examples. I could go into other just daily things that are occurring in my life as a result of the focus I've had, the restoration focus I've had the last 6 months. But I share those two examples because they're, I feel, really significant, to go from being completely shut down physically to being able to work out 4 times a week, feeling like my child was taken away from me, concerned about parental alienation. And then, within 4 months, that relationship is solid, and is going really well. So what are the things that allowed, how is it that the change, in my opinion, was so quick? We're talking about weeks and months as opposed to years, which I know, unfortunately, a lot of people, myself included in the past, have endured things for years. So I wanted to highlight the things that I feel made this shift so quick, in the event that it may help you in making decisions about your healing path and your healing journey. So one, I will say, is commitment. And I'm going to explain what that means, because I think we all, when there's something not going well in our lives, we are committed to fixing it, right? We're committed to finding a solution. Of course, I want to lose weight. Of course, I want a healthy relationship with my partner. Of course, I want to not be in grief or in pain or things like that, right? And then I think being really, I'm going to say some things that may be hard to hear, but to really ask yourself, like, how committed am I? Like, am I willing to put in the time, the money, and those kinds of things, whatever it takes? Am I willing to do whatever it takes in order to resolve this? And when I reached out, and I may have mentioned some of this in one of the episodes, but when I reached out to the practitioner, first of all, I set an intention before I selected a practitioner. And I know I mentioned this, but I'm just going to repeat it because I think it's worth repeating. I set the intention I asked the universe, my spirit team, guides, whatever you want to call your power, the source of energy that's out there. I said, I request guidance on I request a healing practitioner who is able to bring me to support me in restoring full health and vitality. Full health and vitality. That was my intention. That was my goal. That was the vision that I put out there. So it wasn't help me resolve this symptom that I'm feeling in my hands and my body. It wasn't help me resolve the situation with my son. I want full restoration and vitality, and I want somebody who can support me with that. And then lo and behold, who did I come across? But a practitioner who does exactly that, right? So I could have easily worked with somebody who dealt with just specific aspects of what I was experiencing, but I found somebody who was specifically trained in and experienced in bringing people to full vitality. Exactly that. So having a vision of what it is that you want to experience and to have in your life. Are you looking for somebody who can help you with one very specific thing? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I could have said, I want someone to help me make my arms stop hurting all the time. Or I want somebody to help me with my relationship with my son, right? So it's perfectly okay to be specific. In my case, I kept it broad because I was like, I'm done with this. I have felt similar to this in the past. Now it's coming up again. And like, I want this resolved. So one, if you're taking notes, being really clear on what it is that you want in the vision. And then being truly committed to the vision. Okay, so this practitioner came to me, or not came to me, but, we connected. And wow, the budget, the investment is not in my budget. All right, am I doing this or am I not doing this? I'm doing it, right? So I found a way to make that investment, and also something that I did not share in Phoenix Burning, right? So those two things I believe I've shared. I then chose to continue working with that practitioner remotely in a coaching capacity. And I had for sure used up all my available cash in the 5-day deep dive. And I was like, I do not know how I'm going to find the money to continue working in a coaching capacity. And again, I just decided I was going to make it happen. And I put that out into the universe. And within 4 days, the money that I needed in order to continue working with him came into my life. So I'm not here to talk about manifesting specifically. But the point is more to hold the vision and hold the commitment within yourself. And when you do those two things, you'll be, I've been amazed at how solutions can present themselves. Then the commitment also was when I was working with my coach, both in the 5-day deep dive and then for the 12 sessions after, to really then implement what I was being told, right? So the biggest piece about commitment, though, that I really want to speak to is the commitment to yourself. And I'm going to give an example of this because I talk about this all the time and I implement that to the best of my ability. And yet I felt I had some examples over the past 6 months of where I sort of got tripped up in following through in commitments to myself. So I'm going to give you some examples of that and of what that really means to truly be committed to yourself. So I actually was speaking with a client this morning, and she made a comment that she is really good in following through with agreements. She used the word agreements with other people, right? Whether it's work or friends or things like that. And she acknowledged, she's like, I'm not really good on following through with agreements with myself. And I think a lot of us aren't. I certainly wasn't for a long time. So this is a skill that I've been practicing for a few years now, and still continuing to improve. So make an agreement with yourself. And I found that it can be helpful to literally make an agreement, like write it down, say it out loud. Like, what is the commitment that you are making to yourself? So I'll give you an example. So if you watch Phoenix Burning, I made a commitment to myself to 6 months of restoration. So we're now at the end of that 6 months, which is why I'm providing this follow-up. And my main commitment, I kept it broad. I didn't have like a long list of things. I did make lists sometimes throughout the process to support me, right? As you may have heard in some of the episodes. But my commitment was to lead with rest, to lead with restoration. For 6 months, I am going to lead with rest. And I revised that rest or restoration, because over the course of the 6 months, I no longer necessarily felt that I needed the rest, the literal rest, the physical, like sleeping and resting that I did at the beginning. But I'm going to lead with restoration, right? So what does that mean? It means providing for myself whatever it is in that moment that's contributing to my restoration. So for me, a big part is physical exercise and physical movement. We all need exercise. For me specifically, I really thrive when I'm able to be physically active, and I notice a very big dip in my energy when I'm not physically active. So the fact that I hadn't worked out for 5 years was a really big thing for me. So I decided I was going to work out. I also decided I was going to do martial arts, because I felt that martial arts would support me on the emotional and spiritual level with certain things that I was wanting to shift within myself. So I found this gym and I checked it out, and went to this class and fell in love with the teacher and the program. It was just exactly what I felt I needed right now. It was nearby. The teacher was amazing. Everything just felt right. And the classes that I wanted to go to were in the morning, not early morning, like 10 o'clock in the morning. So that means by the time I go to the workout and then shower and then eat and then get to my office, sit down on my computer, it's probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And the very first thing that came up for me was like a sinking feeling. And I was like, I can't do this. That's ridiculous. Of course I can. I specifically can. What I mean by that is I run my own business. I set my own hours. Yes, I need to be available. I would choose to be available to my clients. And also I have flexibility. I'm like, who says I can't work from 1 to 8 or however many hours I want to work in that day. Who says that I have to work from, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever, right? And so I did. So for 2 days a week, and then on the weekends. So I don't see clients on the weekends. So for 2 days a week, I blocked out my calendar. I'm going to martial arts in the morning. My day starts at 1:00. And that's just the way it is. And it was interesting to me that my first response was, I can't do this. And then literally, only because I'm quite certain, only because I had made the commitment to myself. So the first thing was a sinking feeling. The second thing that came up was I made a commitment to lead with restoration. What does leading with restoration mean in this particular situation? This specific class and this specific program is really important to me, and I believe is going to support me in the healing I'm doing right now, right? So maybe if it had been something else, I may have made a different decision. Oh, it's okay, I can find something else. That may have been a solution. This particular case, I was like, nope, I want to do this program. Okay, I'm leading with restoration. All right, I'm going to set up my schedule so that I can do it. And then pretty quickly, I do some work with a company that's separate from my coaching work. And they came up, they were like, oh, we have a meeting. This person is international and they can't meet in the afternoons starting at 1, right? Are you available to meet in the morning? And I stopped and I had to think about it. And I was like, oh, this person's international. They're really constricted on their time. And truthfully, like I could make it work and I could just find a way to do my workout a different time, different day. I was like, no, just these 2 days, it wasn't every single day. These 2 days, I blocked out the morning. And so we found another time. We did do it in the morning on a different day when I hadn't blocked out that time, right? So the reason I'm sharing that is just to point out how easy it can be to break an agreement with ourselves. And to not follow through, right? And so I'm like, okay, I said that I was committed to resolving this issue. How committed am I? What is it that I'm really willing to do? Am I willing to stand up for myself and set my schedule in such a way that I can do the thing that I feel is really important? Am I willing to be creative and figure out a way to hire the coach that I felt was really going to support me and help me through this 6-month restoration period? So another thing I wanted to point out about the commitment too is not just the time and money and follow through. Those are all really important. Another aspect of it for me was really being willing to step back. So I took a significant step back from coaching and especially from marketing, putting out content, those kinds of things for my business, which was scary because it's my livelihood, right? And being willing to say, not only am I willing to invest the money into whatever the resources are that I need, I'm also willing to adjust my lifestyle because I took a significant decrease in income by choosing to not be at full capacity, by choosing to not continue to market, to put things out there, to bring in new clients and things like that. I said, no, this is more important. My health is more important. My emotional well-being is more important. My relationship with my kids is more important. And I took a really big step back from my life, from my business. So that was a financial decision. And it was also an emotional decision because so much of my so much of my fulfillment comes from the work that I do, right? So, and when fulfillment and purpose is an important part of our everyday life. And I was willing to say, to sort of shift my purpose into my health and say, no, this is more important right now. I took a step back from socializing and making new connections or maintaining old connections. And I really just, for probably more than 6 months, because I was feeling unwell for probably a couple months. So probably a total of around 8 months, 8 or 9 months. Actually, I really took a big step back from my work and from my social life. So that's another aspect of making agreements with yourself and following through. And 6 months may feel like a long time. I recently mentioned to someone that I've been processing emotions for about 6 months. Now, not processing emotions every day of that time, right? It was a restoration period. And she was like, wow, that's a long time. Really, it's not. I'm almost 50 years old. 6 months, over the 6 months, so that my future can be healthy, can be sustainable, can be fulfilling, can be full of health and vibrancy and vitality. 6 months is nothing. And really, it didn't take the whole 6 months to feel that way. But I did remain in my commitment to my rest and restoration for those 6 months. So how did I get through? How did I find resolution so quickly, and such, I believe, quickly, right? In my health and my relationships with my kids, and my own feelings within myself, being really committed and making an agreement, making a specific agreement with myself. And then what have I learned? So I've learned a lot of things. I've learned a lot of things. But I'm just going to share a few high level things about what I've learned in this experience. So I had to eat some humble pie. That's one thing that I learned. So one of the things looking back is I realized, looking back at December, January, when I was feeling really unwell, I felt really frustrated because I felt like, okay, I'm an intelligent person, I'm a self-aware person, I'm a healer. I have peers who are healers, and I should be able to fix this for myself. Lots of problems with that sentence. Some of you may have caught it. I'm not going to dissect it right now. That's how I felt at the time. I should be able to resolve this on my own. And the thing is, that's really quite ridiculous. I was recently getting my hair done, and I was admiring the hairdresser's hair, and I asked her if she did her hair herself, and she kind of I realized how silly that question was, right? She's like, I can do some basic things like my bangs, but if I really want to get my hairstyle right, do the back and the coloring and everything, she's like, no, I go to someone to do that, right? So it's not about like, do I know how? It's, we're not able to see ourselves. We can't see the backs of our heads. We can't see our blind spots. And recognizing that and acknowledging for myself that it's okay. Yes, I may know how. That doesn't mean I don't need support in somebody to be able to see the back of my head, to see, to see my blind spots and all those kinds of things. And similar with that was that, the tools and skills and practices that I learned, there were certain things that were unique. Of course, every practitioner has things that are unique. And also there was so much that was similar, very similar to the work that I do. I was laughing just like to myself, hearing myself in my sessions with my coach, because I could hear him saying things that I've said to my clients, right? Right. And again, it's part of that. You can't see your own blind spots. And it's recognizing, this is what I really want to get across. It's recognizing that there may not be that magic bullet. So I think for myself, a lot of times in my healing journey, back when I was dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome, and then more recently when I was dealing with acute symptom, new sort of symptoms, some new symptoms, and grief and things like that, I was like, I want to find the one thing, the magic bullet, the reason that I'm experiencing all this, so I can fix it and make it better. And with my health journey, with the chronic fatigue, what I discovered and the fibromyalgia and the depression and the migraines, that's sort of the first part of my story, the first part of my healing journey. I had to advocate for myself, and I kept finding new things like, oh, I have some, food sensitivities, or I need vitamin B12, or I need, I'm allergic to this, or my thyroid's not quite functioning right. There are all these little pieces that when I put them all together, I was able to start feeling better. And so my point was that, it was like, oh, is there something magic about this practitioner that that's like the thing that's going to make me better? And it was funny to me to be like, oh my gosh, there's so much overlap in our work. And again, there was a little bit of that, like, I know this, I should be able to do this for myself. And recognizing that having that outside perspective to really support me in getting to that level of vibrancy that I wanted to experience in my life. Being willing to step outside of my own ego and my own self and accept that support. Okay, so the other thing that came up for me, another lesson that I've learned that I really want to share here, I think it's so important because I see some of my clients experiencing similar things. And so one of the questions that came up for me, again, back in December and January in particular, when I was feeling so terrible, was, why am I feeling this way? The grief, emotionally not feeling well, physically not feeling well. Like, I take such good care of myself. I do. If you're someone who's followed me for a while, if you've worked with me privately, I literally do implement the things that I talk about, not to perfection, but consistently, right? I'm like, I sleep, I get a lot of sleep. I sleep a lot. I eat nutritious food, whole foods. I meditate, I do breathing practices, I go for walks, I go outside. I do a gratitude practice, pretty much hit all the things that most people in the self-development world would tell you that you would need. Why am I hitting this wall? Now, one thing is that we may be doing all of these things well, and that one thing, like what I was just talking about, the blind spot, right, where I need an outside perspective to show me, yes, you're doing all these things, but you're ignoring, this little gremlin over here that's just overpowering all these good things that you're doing. So that's one thing. So that goes back to being willing, right, to accept help or look for help. The other piece, though, is that our healing and our restructuring or our uncovering, I really think of it as an uncovering of our true self, our core self. It happens in stages. And if you've experienced, a difficult childhood, and I use that word very loosely, I didn't realize my childhood was difficult, right? But maybe, emotional neglect, emotional manipulation, those kinds of things that resulted in, trauma in your system. And then for me, right, being in a marriage with a narcissistic personality type for 16 years, I had all these layers of trauma. I keep saying essentially trauma because I didn't relate to the word trauma, and I know a lot of people who listen, who are in my community, they don't recognize that what they're experiencing was trauma, but in my system it's trauma, right? So there's all these layers of trauma, and all the work that I did, all the healing that I've done, was peeling away these layers and creating a level of safety for myself. Emotional safety, physical safety. And when you're safe and you're stable, now you're safe enough and stable enough to open up to whatever's underneath. So the things that were coming up, they weren't new things, they were old things. They were old things that I was carrying around with me since 2 years old, probably even from inside the womb, but certainly memories came up from my very early childhood, and things that I don't know that they were exactly new. It wasn't like this, oh my God, I didn't realize that was there. Um, but it's almost like that thorn that you might get that you've had for a really long time, and you just accommodate it and you don't even realize that you're accommodating it. It's like, it's there, but you don't really think anything of it. So healing this external trauma, and then allowed me to then open up to whatever was underneath and allow that to come up. So I believe that was part of the healing crisis, the Phoenix burning that I experienced in December and January, was that, yeah, I was doing all these things for myself and had for a few years been living in that way. And I had now resolved so many things on the external side of things. I was now able to go deeper, which didn't feel great. But that's the perspective I have now looking back. And that's why I really wanted to share that with you in the event you're somebody who's similar. Like, I take great care of myself. Like, why am I struggling? Why am I not feeling well? It's likely that you're now allowing yourself to go deeper and resolve things at an even deeper level. So another thing that I walked away with is recognizing that it does not have to take a long amount of time in order to have a significant up level in your life, a significant healing event. We talk about healing crises, right? So you can also have a significant healing event. One of the things I walked away with is I'm now offering a shorter program. So if you're somebody who has that level of commitment that I was talking about, where you're willing to do whatever it takes, you've got something that you've been trying to work through on your own because you're smart. You've done a lot of self-development work. You've probably tried a lot of different modalities, and you have resources in your world, and which is probably why you're watching this video. And you're like, okay, I want to resolve this once and for all. I'm committed to resolving this once and for all. So I do have 3 openings right now for a 12-week program. If you are somebody that wants to grab one of those 3 spots, I invite you to get on a call with me. I do like to talk with people one-on-one so that you can get to know me. I can hear more about what's happening for you, and we can see if it's a good fit, because we work very closely together during those 12 weeks. So you can click on the link below if you're watching this on YouTube. It's in your email if you've received this video via email. Book a call with me, and we can talk about whether this 12-week program is the right fit for you.